So now we are going to deal with in understanding of democracy. We have walked in the tour of a journey from understanding how is the democratic setup structure started, what are the foundations to have democracy, how would be the government types, the federation, federal structure, federalism, and then we moved on to the political parties, the understanding of political parties. So in this tour of democracy, now we are coming to the real life situation where the expectations towards democracy. How are the expectations towards democracy? So that is a chapter name coming with chapter number 7, Outcomes of Democracy. So when it comes to the outcomes of democracy, how can you say that these will be the outcomes of democracy or that will be the outcomes of democracy? When we were discussing about the number of countries which have opted for democracy, that was nearly 100 countries in the past 50 years have turned towards in the favor of democracy. So the 20th century, the best form of democracy, the best form of government in literal terms is democracy. So democracy is considered as the best form of government of 20th century. So this is the major outcome of the situation. But now, why did people have chosen democracy to be the best form of government of the 20th century or the 21st century? Because most of the countries have experienced in the 20th century the form of government that is dictatorship. So, in relation with democracy versus the dictatorship or dictatorship versus the democracy, most of the people have chosen to go for democracy rather than for dictatorship. So, they said no to dictatorship and yes to democracy. So, the initially which made the people to opt or choose or stand by the side of democracy was the comparison between the dictatorship and the democratic structure. So, now the point is democracy able to fulfill all the dreams, wishes, needs of the people in reality? So how can we assess the functioning of democracy? So that is a fundamental question now. How do we assess the outcomes of democracy? So, how do we assess the outcomes of democracy is a larger and a very big question. Why should we assess the outcomes of democracy at all? What is the purpose to assess the outcomes of democracy? See, till the form of the government has been established, the people have chosen to go for the best form of government, that is democracy. But once the democracy has come, people started to expect more from democracy. So let us try to understand what are the basic factors that favors for the democracy. The first one is enhances equality or promotes the concept of equality. When the concept of equality was brought initially in the dictatorship or in the aristocracy or in the oligarchy or in any other form of government, we usually have to have a feeling that there are the native citizens and we also have the people who are not having the native structure. They are considered as slaves or second grade citizens. We also have the active citizens, passive citizens concept in the previous societies. But as the time passed on, people realized that we all are born with the same capabilities. So we all are equal. So the concept of equality has been promoted clearly in the democratic form of government. So that is a basic form which added flavor to to make democracy a really interesting and compulsory for the people for the modern generations. The next one is the concept of dignity. The word dignity is assured for everybody in the society. It is not given to only one particular section of people, one particular group of people, or one particular religious backdrop people. Dignity has been assured to all people, irrespective of their caste, color, creed, religion, race. So, whomever they may be, whichever region they may be belonging to, but dignity is must and mandatory in the democratic structure. So, second basic thing what they have is the dignity in democracy. The third one is improves in decision making. In regards to quality. So, there is a clear debate, discussion, procedure which elaborately happens in both the houses, in the lower house, in the upper house. The views are collected, recorded, again they have been finalized, then they would go for a conclusion which is suitable best. So the best one will be picked up. So while the decision has been taken, a deliberate and detailed procedure has been followed, which makes it very clear to all the people that this is a major outcome of the debates and the government has chosen to opt for this kind of changes. In this way, it is giving clarity for all the people of what they are happening. So it brings out the quality output on the decision making. So the third major point is the quality output of decision making, and then it also have the methods to resolve the conflicts. So when the methods to resolve the conflicts, the issue is, for example, we have a conflict between the dictator and the other groups of the people. It would end up by finishing up the enmity group by the dictator's army or the personals. But in democracy, you can have the people together with the opposite views. The point is here, people may be having different views on the same issue, but ultimately we all are the human beings and share the same planet. So we need to understand that people with different views and different ideologies also share the same planet. So we all are different in our views, in our ideologies, but ultimately we all are human beings. In democracy, the opportunity is given for the people to express their dissatisfaction and dissent openly, and it can also be addressed if it is a serious concern. It's not only the majority people who decide what has to be done. Yes, of course, in democracy we have the count of the majority to be taken, but the minority will also have a voice to put out their views clearly. So that is the reason why democracy has also been opted, because it provides a method to resolve the conflicts, how to solve the conflicts. And the last but not the least, allows to correct the mistakes. In case government knowingly or unknowingly, if it does any kind of mistakes or without the proper understanding of the concept, if it goes to anything wrong, they can immediately correct it. How can they immediately correct it? How would they know, like, even after following a deliberate procedure and all? The opposition parties will be there to put out their views, putting out the pressure on the government to modify which is against the interest of the people. So when these kind of views are brought up to the notice of the existing party, would obviously get a chance to rethink on what was the policy that was framed. Is it really affecting the community of the people or the section of the people so seriously? Are we going aside from the regular track of welfare of the society? These all questions can be addressed and can do the necessary changes whenever they need. So this kind of all these things have added and made democracy the best form of government of the modern century and made best when in comparative with the dictatorship. But do we really feel that democracy is really practically applicable and does all these things? We fall into a dilemma. We have certain consumptions or we have certain assumptions like democracy is good in principle but not in practice. So this is a state of dilemma. A dilemma means a situation where you have the doubt on what you are doing. You can't judge yourself like either this side is right or the other side is right. So now when we take out the fundamental point here, like democracy is good in principle but not in practice. Democracy is good in principle in the sense it provides a chance of promoting equality, enhancing the dignities, improving in decision making, provides methods to resolve the conflicts and allows to correct the mistakes and all these things. But in actual practice, is the democratic governments or are the democratic governments really able to do these kind of things reality in the real world, in the real time situations? Do they really have the time to assess all these things? Do they really follow all these things criteria whenever they are doing? Are the things going on very clear or not? So these kind of dilemma questions are there. So these kind of dilemma questions give us for us a certain kind of new set of doubts. What are the new set of doubts? Or actually why are we getting these kind of dilemma situations in our thoughts or in our thought process? What are the changes that we need to understand actually? The first point what we need to understand is that we all are fans. Most of the people like democracy and fascinated about this. So once you like something and you are getting fascinated about this one, you would like to expect more from that. So when things are going beyond the expectations, first thing is you like something and you started expecting something. After you are expecting from them, and once if they are not able to reach up to your expectations, you start to question the reality or practicality of the democracy, because they are not able to fulfill your expectations. They are not able to fulfill your expectations. So democracy are the fascinated, because you like democracy, you want democracy to do all these things. When all these things are done in democracy, and if they are not able to fulfill these things in democratic structure because of the delay of the procedure, because of the negligence of the leaders, or because of various other factors, you start to push up a question saying that is truly democracy working or not? Democracy is good in principle, but in practicality democracy is not working like that. So these all things are really a question mark. But the ultimate point what we all need to understand is that democracy is so the democracy is also a form of government, that's all. Democracy is not a super magical power, or democracy does not have any magical things which can be done within overnight or within a short process of time. Democracy is a form of government which we have chosen when in comparative with the dictatorship. So democracy cannot do everything always on a single slot. It takes time, and the day by day expectations of democracy are increasing rapidly overnight and overnight. So things are going on severely ahead than the democratic achievements. See, when we talk about the things of democracy, we all like democracy, we all want democracy to be very effective. When we talk about the democracy to be very effective, the things are like this. You want everything to be done in the best. But actually democracy is also a form of government. There are certain restrictions, there are certain implications for that also. Only certain things can be done in democratic setup also. Democracy is not the dictatorship. Dictatorship can do whatever he wants, but democracy has to address all voices and try to pacify all the sections of the people. So we need to remember and we need to recognize the fact that democracy is also a form of government only. It is not something superficial or supernatural thing which can do everything with a magical wand. So the fundamental point is democracy is also a form of government. So in this point of session we have discussed about why democracy has been chosen as the best form of government. What are the basic things that democracy brings it itself to be different from dictatorship? One is like it enhances or increases or promotes the equality. It also enhances the dignity of every individual, improves in decision making, the quality of the decision making, methods to resolve the conflicts. It provides a room to resolve the conflicts. It also provides the opportunity to correct the mistakes if anything are done. But democracy has a question of dilemma, like does democracy is good in principle but not in practice? These kind of questions pop up in our brains because we all like democracy, we all are fascinated with democracy, but the actual fact is that democracy is also a just form of government. It is not a magical wand or some superficial power which can do all things in a wonderfully well-mannered way. We are the people who have chosen the government. So the people those who are in democracy are also human beings. So we need to get the reaction from the overall sections of the people. It's not only the government that can do everything. So now, in the process of understanding the democratic structures and the governments, let us try to put certain words and justify them whether they are applicable to the democratic governments or not. Let us take the words like accountable, responsive, and legitimate governments. When I use the words like accountable, responsive, and the legitimate government, we need to understand clearly here whether the words are providing the exact meanings or whether is it followed in democratic structure or not. The point is, when we say like accountable to democracy, so the democracy is a concept where we already understands that whatever we do, the election process, the selection of the candidates, when they were elected with a certain percentage of voting, and obviously it proves for them like whether they are elected or not. Once the role of the people is very high in the democratic structure. So ultimately when the next term comes for the elections, the political parties who run the government are obviously accountable and answerable to the people, which means they are answerable to the citizens. In case if the citizens are not happy with the rule, with the procedures, with the functioning and working of the party in government, in ruling, they can easily change it. So ultimately the people are the key power shareholders who decide the future of the political parties. So political parties are in the ruling party or in the opposition party do need to get access to the people and explain their policies, programs, everything. So ultimately, yes, there may be a delay in taking of the procedure of the time. There may be a delay in taking the decisions to implementations. But let us take an example. If the decisions are taken fast by the government and which are creating or generating problems for the people, it would bring lots of trouble for the people in the day-to-day scenario. Instead of that, a delayed and detailed structure which may be delayed for some time, but has a clear understanding of what would be the consequences of this one, what would be the negative effects of this one, what would be the ultimate thing that may happen if this kind of decisions are taken. That would be discussed deliberately in the issue, and after explicitly it is analyzed, then the government would take the initiative to take certain action against any policy or introduce any laws. So we need to understand here, yes, in democratic structure and in democratic setup, we may get certain amount of time be delayed, but the actual thing is they are trying to understand from all angles and all possible necessary steps to avoid any kind of effect or negativities which are coming to the public because of this kind of laws which are going to be passed. So the point is, first one, it is accountable to the citizens. Next one, it responds on the issues, discuss and then take any decisions. So the things are very clear in democracy. We all know democracy is having certain loopholes or certain negativities. Let us say democracy takes a lot of time, democracy does not give chance for the minority group of people, democracy obviously takes, like, they generally don't do in a fast manner, they don't do it in a trend manner, they don't make any off-shooking decisions, they don't always be very fast, very quick, but they do a detailed study, they do a detailed procedure, they follow certain aspects, they follow certain criteria before the decisions are taken. The democracy is a legitimate or not, that it happens to be in the time frame of the regular, free and fair elections. So when they are conducted regularly, they are accountable to the people, citizens. They are done without any pressure, without anything falling on them, and the fair method of elections makes it clear that the democratic government are more accountable, responsive and the legitimate things. And we also need to understand the point is that there is no sharing of information from the democratic governments to the people. That is a key point which we need to understand. No sharing of information to the public. When there is no sharing of information to the public, which means that in democracy you don't get the channel to discuss everything openly with everybody, or government do not put everything for the open debates and discuss and then take the decisions. So the no sharing of information to the public means here the government do not discuss everything elaborately with the public and then take the decisions. Then it would be a lot of misunderstandings and it would create a lot of problems for the people also. It would lead us to a state of confusion where nobody knows what is right and what is wrong, what to be done and what not to be done. So when the sharing of information when it's compared to the dictatorship form of government or any other form of government, it is far better when compared to the other forms of government. And in case if any citizen, he or she has a doubt whether the detailed procedure of structure has been followed before the decision is taken or not, he can find out in an elaborate manner and if necessary bring it to the notice of the government why these steps are not assured, why these deliberations are not taken place, why these issues are not been covered in your deliberate discussions. So in this way the people are well connected with the democracy. People know what does a democracy do. Yes, we have a common evil, corruption. So corruption is the evil of democracy. Yes, there are some negative implications towards democracy also. But in reality, when it comes to the corruption in democracy, it is ultimately the people who decide this one. We everybody know in democracy that it is having some delay, slow in the decision making. So in democracy we have certain steps, certain deliberative methods, certain kind of criteria which need to be understood carefully, then only you can jump to any conclusion. Once you finish understanding the concept, then you decide something, then you take a decision, and in that point of view where a citizen, he or she feels that this kind of issue has to be addressed more better than this, he can approach to the authorities, he can ask the details of how the procedure has happened, and if necessary he can put his views which may require move to the government and question the actual process of happening. So like this the modifications are also can be done. So yes, it takes time, it is delayed, but democracy is the government of people. So ultimately whatever that happens with the people's concern, with the knowledge of the people. If anything that goes wrong against the interest of the people would be not sparing any political party for the next elections. So it's very clear that they understand this one, and the democracy itself creates its own fans, its own fanatic people who like democracy so much because of the way it works, the way it takes the decisions, the way it follows the procedural methods. So things when are going in this way, people obviously become great fans of them, and democracy itself creates its own positive outlook in the people. That's the major achievement of democracy. So when we discuss about the democracy, as we have discussed that democracy is accountable, democracy is responsive, democracy is a legitimate form of government. Now let us try to focus on some more things which makes democracy distinguished from the dictatorship. So the other major form is like economic growth. Economic growth and development. When we talk about the economic growth and development in comparison with democracy versus dictatorship, democracy versus dictatorship, from the past 50 years, let us take from 1950 to 2000, there has been a slight negativity towards the democracy. The negativity is democracy has always been a bit slow in the achieving the economic targets. When it comes to dictatorship, the dictatorship is somehow very much punctual or perfect in achieving their targets. Let us try to understand this with an example. Let us take Stalin. Stalin was a dictator of Russia. When Russia was taken over by Stalin, the financial position or the economic position was literally very bad. They were not completely organized. They are very far away from the development. They lost in the World War I. They were asked to remove their battalions. So it was literally really a bad picture of face of Russia. But when he took the dictatorship and he forced the people to follow the collective farming and made them to understand or forced them to understand the reality of working together. After a span of some 20 years, if you look at the same Russia, Russia became the dominant player in the Second World War. The First World War itself, Russia was in the trembling situation. Russia was not ready to participate in the World War I. Even if it is participating also, there were rallies, there were protests asking to buy peace, go for agreements, peace treaties. But as the situations turned, Stalin was very successful in getting the economic development up to the mark according to the requirement of all the people and the requirement of the nation, and brought Russia into the list of the superpower nations. So somehow, when it compares to democracy, dictatorship always had a very good easy access or an appropriate access to get the economic development in comparison with democracy. Stalin's example is a perfect example for this, and in counter to this, you can take the example of India, or you can take the example of Bangladesh, you can take the example of Sri Lanka, where the democracy is far widely discussed and practiced, but still, even after 50-60 years of India independence also, we are still a developing nation but not a developed nation. We still have questions on many issues, but still we can't counter any of the other powerful nations. So there is a slight negativity when it compares to the development of economic growth in respective with the democratic nature and the dictatorship attitude. When it comes to development also, economic growth literally means development. Development means that growth. So the development is expected to have in a larger scale. So when a democratic country is developing, it is developing in a very slow and steady process. When a dictator is developing the country, it is developing in a very fast and rapid manner. Let us take the example of Hitler here. Hitler, from a situation where Germany was in a very troublesome situation, where they faced a lot of problems, where they have to face the severe effect of the economic crisis or the economic depression which came in 1929. But ultimately, the problem came for that when Hitler took over the leadership, he brought some economic changes, he forced the people to follow them, he made it mandatory to everybody to do the things, and he was, in a short span of 10 years, in a decade, he changed the entire outlook of the Germany. Again, Germany is ready to fight the Second World War. So, in actual terms, he was the main cause for the Second World War, as we all know that. So, in this way, when it is compared to economic development and growth, it is the dictators who had a very slighter edge when compared to democracy. And the next aspect, when we see, let us take the next aspect, reduction of inequalities and poverty. The reduction of inequalities and poverty. The inequalities, let us take, we have three basic divisions in the society: rich, middle class, poor. Rich class, middle class, poor class. When the dictators or many other forms of governments like the communist governments or any other governments, there was a chance, there was a possibility of the people from the category of the middle class to jump into the middle class and then to the rich class. May not be completely into the rich class, but most of the people from the poor class were able to at least manage to jump into the middle class. And in middle class, we got the two major divisions again: high middle class, low middle class. So at least from the poor class, they moved on to the lower middle class rather than to the higher middle class. But when it comes to democracy, even after 50-60 years of turning up of India to be a democratic country, still there are lot of inequalities. There is a lot of inequality between the people. There is a clear division between the rich and the poor. In economical terms, we do call this one as haves and have-nots. These haves and have-nots have made it very clear according to the situation what has to be done, what should not be done. So And when we talk about the word called poverty, this concept of poverty has been expanding only because of democracy. Because in democracy, the interests of the people are the major issue or major concern for the governments. But in practicality, when we discuss about the functioning of the democracy or when we analyze about the situations, we get to know that government's efforts are very less or very few in order to eliminate the poverty or to reduce the inequality. Sometimes really we feel very bad for the people, those who are coming under the poor class category, where they find it very difficult to buy the basic amenities. They also find it really very tough to fulfill their basic things, food, clothing and shelter. So somehow it is really very tough when in comparison with the dictatorship, when it compares with the terms, figures, economic growth, development, reduction of inequalities, poverty. In these aspects, when you compare truly, dictatorships have shown some positive results in terms of democracy. But democracy also have some positive assets. The positive assets are the accommodation of social diversity. So when it compares to the first point and the second point, there are points which are in the favor of dictatorship, slightly leaning towards dictatorship. But when it comes to the concept of accommodation of the social diversity, here no form of government can accommodate all the groups and make them to live peacefully. But in most of the dictatorship cases, the situations turn to be like this. The dictators would either take a blind eye or a deaf ear towards the conflicts between the groups, or they would like to pressurize the minority group to go to compromise with the majority group. So the situations are a bit reverse in democracy. In democracy, you have a choice to accommodate everything. Yes, in democracy we have the concept of rule of majority. When I say rule of majority, I am not talking about the actual rule of majority what we are discussing when the election process is going on. When see the rule of majority or minority, people may have the change of the differences of the opinions. Sometimes some issues, some people may feel it's right, but the other time they may feel it's wrong. So the majority and the minority game is not a permanent game. The people vary from minority to majority and majority to minority. It is not compulsory the same section of the majority group people do always remain in the majority group. They sometimes move to the minority section, sometimes jump from the minority to the majority. So it's not leaving aside somebody and moving ahead. Democracy always try to address all the concerns of all the citizens. May not be able to implement them appropriately at that time, but the concerns are taken into consideration, and for the maximum situations the concerns are addressed very clearly. But when it comes to the dictatorship, in the dictatorship or in any other form of government, the people, those who are having any kind of social disparities or any kind of differences, any kind of issues, any kind of conflicts, these people do not have any choice to do other than to go for compromise or to be silent. If they do not go for compromise and they do not be silent, obviously they are inviting troubles for themselves. So this invitation of the troubles was a significant feature for democracy, for the dictatorship when it compares to the democracy. In democracy, you always have a choice to discuss your thoughts, your views your expression of your faith. But in the dictatorship process, you really face a lot of trouble, and sometimes you need to compromise yourself. When I brought up the examples of Stalin and Hitler, yes, there was a lot of diversity in the population of Russia and in Germany. So in Russia, Stalin forced the people to compulsorily follow the collective farming, while Hitler took up the view of ending up a particular section of people. He targeted the particular section of people. He eliminated them. He kept some concentration camps for them in order to make them away from the society. He killed them literally. But in democracy, you don't find these kind of steps taken by any kind of government or a leader. The dictatorship is run by a person's perspective, but a democracy is run on the basis of the people's perspective, not on any individual's perspective. The group perspective, the people's intentions, the people's motives are the main basic considerations for taking any decision. And the major contribution for democracy comes up with the words like dignity and freedom of the citizens. That is the fourth fundamental pillar of democracy. Dignity and freedom of the citizens. So, the dignity and the freedom of the citizens. Dignity, self-respect. When it comes to democracy, everybody has the opportunity to be equally respected by each other. There is no discrimination based on religion, caste, category, racism, or any other social differences. You may be coming from a rich community, you may be coming from a poor community, but there is no concept of discrimination at all in the democratic setup. When there is no concept of discrimination, automatically it enhances your dignity. You need to respect each other. Mutual respect is mandatory in democracy. When it comes to dictatorship, the king is a final ultimate authority. The leader is a final ultimate authority. There is no choice for a person to have his own rights. There is no chance for any person to respect each other. Even if a police personnel wants to arrest you, he should behave very respectable way with you. But when it comes to the previous case in the dictatorship, I have a right to attack you at any point of time, arrest you and get you imprisoned. If sometimes they may also make you to kill you also. So situations are worst when compared to democracy to dictatorship in regards to equality or dignity of the people. And next one is freedom of the citizens. The freedom of the citizens is really kept on a top mark priority in democracy. All the people are made it mandatory to have the right to equality, self-respect, dignity, honor, no concept of discrimination at all, and have complete freedom for all the citizens to do whatever they want unless and until they do not bring any harm for the society in the larger scale. So when it comes to democracy, democracy provides freedom for the people to make the people to grow with the free hand. It provides an opportunity for them to enhance their skills, to learn and understand the democracy properly, to evaluate the democratic structure properly, to participate in democracy, to question democracy, to discuss the policies in democracy, to debate in democracy. These all things brings freedom and equality in citizenship for all the people in democratic structure. But when it comes to dictatorship, there is no concept of freedom there. You are bound to follow the advices or the orders given by the leader. In case you oppose them, you do not follow them, you are going to be in trouble. So, now it's a brief conclusion of this one. We can say that in the four aspects or four different criteria what we have assessed, the democracy in version with the dictatorship, economic growth and development, yes, there is slight inclination towards the dictatorship in the economic growth and development. democracy has been little bit slow, but not very slow in economic growth. Maybe it takes some more time to accommodate all of them, but there are countries which got well developed because of democracy also. Development has been the key motor force in the democratic setup stage countries. So yes, here you may get slight inclination to dictatorship because the moment of the growth of economic rapidness and development when the dictatorship is going on was really fine when compared to democracy, but democracy is far better than dictatorship. Here we may be a little bit negative to democracy, and then when we talk about the reduction of inequalities and poverty, yes, here somewhere where we completely lag behind in respect to democracy when it is compared to dictatorship, because dictatorship tried all its level best to eliminate the rich class, the middle class, the poor class, the inequalities, the poverties and everything, and the leader has taken the initiative to eliminate all these kinds of things. But when it comes to democracy, in democracy we are a little bit lagging behind on this issue actually, because here somehow we lagged behind and completely we are not aware of what to be done and what are the situations that are going to get provoked, because still we need lot of efforts from the government side to eliminate inequalities in various fields and completely to eradicate poverty. Even today the statistics reveal for us that nearly 30 to 35 crore people are below the poverty line who cannot buy even the basic food material requirements for them. So this is really a very bad phase when it compares to Indian setup. So that has to be addressed seriously. And the positive sides of democracy now. Accommodation of the social diversity. Somewhere it is very far ahead when compared to dictatorship. Here it is only slightly behind. Here somehow it is very lagging behind. But when it comes to the third point, accommodation of the social diversity has been a really true factor of democracy. No system in the world can accommodate all the diversified cultures. But democracy is far better than when compared to all the other cultures or structures of the government, because it can accommodate n number of social diversities with the true possible solutions through deliberations, through negotiations. So somehow when it is compared to dictatorship, democracy is far better when we have the social diversity. And in the modern day, if you observe carefully, there is no society which is homogeneous like in the previous times, because of the international migrations, needs, industrial development, advancements, people started to migrate in search of jobs, in search of various other opportunities for them. Now the societies are complex societies. It is a combination of various other nationals living together. Let us take Hyderabad. Hyderabad is a cosmopolitan city where you have different states, peoples of India staying together, different nationals staying together. So in this way, we have various combinations in every corner of the world. So the best form of government for the modern time is accommodating the social diversity. That is the best one is democracy. When it comes to dictatorship, we can take the example of Hitler, where Hitler has targeted a particular section group and he tried to eliminate them. So when it compares to that, democracy is always ahead in accommodating the social diversity. And coming to the rule of majority. The rule of majority has been a very vital concept which is discussed deliberately in context with democracy. The concept of rule of majority and minority was always misunderstood by the people. The concept of rule of majority is on the issue based, not on the party lines or not on any other lines. It is only truly done on the based on the issue concept. Sometimes the people, those who are in majority in this point, would obviously be aligning to the other side on the other issues. So it's not compulsory that always those who are in majority this time will always remain in this time only, this side only. They may be changing, shift from majority to minority, minority to majority. This is another significant feature of democracy. And the last but not the least, dignity and freedom of the citizens. In dictatorship, you are nothing but a slave for your leader. You are bound to follow the rules and regulations which are laid by your leader. It is a mandatory for you to follow. There is no choice given for you. But democracy tries its level best to assure you, to promote your dignity, to enhance your dignity, to provide you freedom, you as a citizen, to make you sure what you require, what has to be done for you to enjoy the equality of your citizenship. So this is a comparative study where democracy can be understood very well in understanding the basic features of democracy. So in understanding the basic features of democracy, when we discussed about the four fundamentals of whether the inequality has been reduced, how far is the economic growth and development, what about the accommodation of the social diversities, what about the dignity and the equality of the citizens. We all know that in most of the countries, the present day world also, the societies are male dominated societies. When the male dominated societies are there, it is not very easy to accommodate the equality status for women. But still, in democracy, we recognize it legally that there should be given equality of status to women. So, the status of equality is assured for women in democracy. If you take the comparative study between the people of French people and the democratic structure people, in the French Revolution, women also participated very actively when it happened. But the real people, those who have done extra hard work, were the women. They have taken the responsibility of the household. At the same time, they also have participated in the revolutionary movements. But in the actual recognition, when we have the Jacobin government coming up into power, we have seen that Robespierre did not give any kind of special privileges or freedom or recognition of equality to women. He did not give the right to vote to women, which means clearly it states that there was no right to equality status there. It is given only for namesake. So when it comes to the terms of democracy, so when it is declared that the status of equality is assured for women in democracy, do you think really that the really women are given equal status in democracy? The answer is no. The answer for this is no. Then what is the necessity or what is the importance of assuring the status of equality for women in democracy? What does it mean then? The point is here, when we make it very clear that this kind of discrimination is not at all accepted from the legal point of view, when the legal laws are made, which say that there is no kind of any inequality which is happening in towards the favor of the woman, though in reality the situation, the society may not be accepting that one, because the society is a male dominated patriarchal family system which we have from many generations for us, not only in our country but many of the countries in the world. So it makes very easy for the women. It makes very easy for the women to raise their voices against the atrocities which are happening against them. So this differentiation is not accepted. It makes it legal for the women to raise their voice and to address the issue seriously. When the issues are taken seriously, it would bring awareness to the people that yes, this is legally not valid. So this cannot be done with the women. But when it is not legally accepted, when there was no legal provision of any kind of equality, then women find it really very difficult to address the issues which they are facing actually. The problem is, when the issue is not at all recognized legally, they have to fight for the legal status and then for the atrocity which happened for them. So it has two troubles. But in a democratic status, when it is already declared that this is an illegal one, you cannot do this one, then obviously it becomes very easy for them to file a petition or complaint and make the justice done to them and bring awareness to the people that this is not accepted legally. This is banned legally. So that kind of assurance is being given in democracy when it compares to dictatorship or any other forms of governments. And the next major thing is they can also go and give a complaint when we have a legal law that these are the atrocities that are happening against me. So it is a real understanding of how the actual working of the democracy comes up, because once the issue happens, they always take the situations for granted if there is no legal provision. If there is a legal provision and there are punishments which are given for the people with this kind of unacceptable things, women also will get the right to approach to the court of law and get their complaints to be retrieved. So these are the necessary things which democracy tries to ensure for all its citizens. And one more thing, the special significance of democracy is the test for democracy never ends. Test for democracy never ends. So the test for democracy never ends means here, whenever you try to ask something for democracy, whether you are satisfied with democracy or not, the people would come up saying certain number of complaints, certain number of dissatisfaction on their faces. So this complaints, this dissatisfaction clearly reveals that itself it is a testimony for the success of democracy. How can you say that when they are complaining it is a success for democracy? That is a fundamental reasonable question. When I say people are dissatisfied, people are unhappy with the working of the government, means they already understood how the working system of the government is there. They had clear awareness of the system's procedure. They all had clear idea on what to be do, what should be done, and they all know what can be done. They all understand the things better. They all have an idea what democracy can do. So these all things make the people to turn from subjects to citizens. So till now they are just only subjects. They don't understand the actual working of the procedures of the government. Once they understand the actual structures of the democracy, they become the active citizens. They start to question the government working. They start to expect many things from the government. That itself reveals that democracy is creating clear understanding for the people. It is making the people to understand and aware of the working procedure which is happening in respective to democracy. So the subjects, the people till yesterday were the subjects, but once the democratic structure has come, they are turning themselves into an active citizens. So this is an understanding of democracy. So democracy brings a real understanding for the people. Today we have many citizens thinking and following the guidelines like my vote will definitely change the working style of the government, and it also gets benefits for me, my interest. So understanding of democracy itself reveals for us that democracy do not have any end of tests. Democracy always had never-ending tests. Once the issue gets closed, the people start to expect the other things from them, which means that democracy is trying to do its best where people are satisfied, people understood the things, and people want it to do it better than this and better than this and better than this. So this is very clear picture of understanding democracy, turning the ultimate subjects into perfect citizens who do expect from their governments, who do have their dreams to come true, who want the government to take a larger share, some more things. So democracy is always done, expected itself proves that it is a testimony for the democracy. The success of democracy lies in the complaints that are getting against democracy. My point is very clear here. Until and unless you don't understand the exact thing what is happening in democracy, you don't go to complain against that. When we have a complaint, when we know that this has to be done the other way, but it has done in the wrong way, then we complain that this is a wrong thing which happened. It is not supposed to be happen like this, which means you know what has to be done. When you know what has to be done, you understood what has to be there. So that is a clarity on democracy. That is the reason why today many of the citizens feel that my vote is count for a government. My vote will get benefits for me. So this is the understanding of democracy, and in this lesson we have clearly understood how is the democratic outcome coming up. How can we justify that? Democracy is accountable, responsive, democracy listens to the concerns of the people, accommodates them, it is a legitimate government. Yes, it had little bit slow in the economic growth and development, it is little bit behind in reducing the inequalities and addressing the issue of poverty, it accommodates the social diversity very well, it ensures equality and dignity for the citizens, it tries to make laws for the women to make equal status for women and make it accessible to the women to fight against any kind of atrocities which they are facing by creating the legal provisions. Democracy itself creates awareness to the people and make the people, turn the people from subjects to the citizens. So that is what we have in this lesson. This is a brief recap.